Shaquille O'Neal stepped into a luxurious restaurant located in the heart of the city, dressed in casual clothes with a few wrinkles, looking as if he had just gone through an ordinary day. He chose a small, discreet table, trying not to draw attention, as the sparkling light from the crystal chandeliers illuminated the space around him. However, before he could even place an order, a waitress approached him with a contemptuous look and an air of arrogance. She sneered, "Are you sure you can afford to dine?" Here her words, sharp and laced with insinuation, were loud enough for other diners to hear. What happened next not only left everyone in the restaurant stunned, but also revealed a truth that changed everything. Before we continue the story, let us know where you're watching from. And if you enjoy stories like this, don't forget to subscribe to the channel Beverly Hills, where every corner sparkles with the glow of opulence, is home to La Lumiere, renowned restaurant known as a symbol of class and sophistication. Tonight, sleek sports cars lined up outside, and customers stepped out in flowing silk gowns and impeccably tailored suits. The light from the crystal chandeliers inside reflected through the glass doors, creating a dreamlike scene. The glass doors of Lumiere opened gently, and a towering figure entered, immediately drawing every gaze. Shaquille O'Neal, over 7 foot tall, walked into the restaurant at a slow, deliberate pace. Unlike the regular clientele of La Lumiere, Shaq wore a simple gray shirt, comfortable sweatpants, and a pair of worn-out sneakers. In a place where brand names were personal statements, back simplicity was a striking contrast. The diners near the entrance stole glances at him. Some recognized Shaquille O'Neal, the basketball legend who once dominated the NBA. But here, amidst the formal atmosphere of La Lumiere's appearance seemed out of place. A few murmurs began to ripple through the tables. At the reception desk, Emma, a young waitress, stood poised in her pristine uniform. Her hair was tied up in a neat bun, not a single strand out of place. Her smile was professionally polite, but her eyes betrayed a certain arrogance. Having worked at La Lumiere for years, Emma took pride in her position at Beverly Hills' most prestigious restaurant. However, her pride often came with a tendency to quickly judge others by their appearance. When Emma's eyes landed on Shaq, she couldn't hide her displeasure. She quickly scanned his athletic attire, then raised an eyebrow slightly. With a judgmental gaze, she thought to herself, someone like this doesn't belong here. Though she was a waitress, Emma often saw herself as a gatekeeper of Lumiere's elegance. In her mind, guests needed to exude appropriateness in every detail, from their clothes to their demeanor. The talk man standing before her, she doubted he could afford a meal here, let alone blend into this refined setting. Shaq, seemingly oblivious to the stares or Emma's attitude, approached the reception desk. He smiled, his deep voice calm and warm. "Good evening. I'd like to book a table if there's one available." Emma hesitated briefly at the politeness in his tone, but quickly regained her air of superiority. She smirked and replied with a condescending tone, "Good evening, but this is a fine dining establishment. Are you sure you want to eat here?" Shaq looked her straight in the eye, his light smile unwavering. "Yes, I'd like to try dining here," he said, his voice steady. Emma rolled her eyes slightly, but maintained her surface level professionalism. "All right, let me check the table availability. Please wait for a moment." She turned away, but her thoughts raced. This guy isn't going to last long here. Let's see how he reacts when he sees the menu prices. Shaquille O'Neal, who had faced immense pressure on the basketball court countless times, stood calmly, casually observing the lavish ambience of La Lumiere. The golden light from the chandeliers bathed his face, reflecting his composed, confident gaze. He didn't say another word, but his unbothered demeanor only heightened the curiosity of those around him. Tonight, Shaq had entered a world of glamour, but he didn't belong to it, or rather, he was about to challenge the rigid prejudices built within this very world. Emma walked out from behind the reception desk with an air of barely concealed arrogance. She had worked at La Lumiere long enough to believe she was the ultimate authority on the class this restaurant represented. In her eyes, Shaq, with his simple tracksuit and calm demeanor, was utterly out of place here. "Are you sure you want to eat here? This is a fine dining establishment," she said, her voice laced with mockery, her gaze lingering on Shaq's worn sneakers before settling on his face. Her smile was thinly veiled disdain, her tone loud enough for nearby diners to overhear. Shaq, well acquainted with judgmental looks and dismissive words, simply smiled. He met Emma's gaze squarely, his eyes steady and unflinching. "Yes, I'd like to try the experience here," he replied, his voice calm and polite, so composed it rendered her sarcasm almost meaningless. But Emma was undeterred, tilting her head, her lips curved into a half smile. She seemed intent on making him uncomfortable. she turned with an exaggerated grace her movements, teetering on the edge of being a performance, and spoke over her shoulder, "Follow me aisle. Find a seat suitable for you, Emma." LED Shaq through the vibrant heart of the restaurant, where tables were immaculately set under the warm glow of crystal chandeliers. The diners exuded an air of sophistication and confidence, engaged in lively conversations. Yet Emma didn't stop at any of these prime spots. Instead, she continued walking, guiding Shaq toward the farthest corner of the restaurant, where the lighting dimmed and the atmosphere felt markedly less refined, stopping at a table near the kitchen where the clatter of dishes and faint traces of food aromas lingered. Emma turned around, her face plastered with a false smile. "The spot should match your style perfectly," she said, dropping the menu onto the table with a light thud loud enough to draw glances from nearby patrons. Shaw nodded, offering no reaction. He sat down, his smile unwavering, his eyes calm, as if everything unfolding around him had no power to disturb his peace. Emma, however, wasn't satisfied. She wanted to see him flustered, embarrassed, or better, yet leave altogether. Yet Shaw's unruffled demeanor left her increasingly irritated. She turned on her heel and walked away, but not without adding loud enough for the nearby tables to hear, "Hope you enjoy the spot. Not everyone gets such a prime seat." The nearby diners began murmuring among themselves. A few sympathetic glances were cast in Shaw's direction, while others watched with curiosity. A young woman, Lisa, shook her head and whispered to her dining companion, "She's so rude. He didn't do anything wrong." Meanwhile, at one of the central tables, bathed in the restaurant's soft glow, an older couple, Mr. and Mrs. Carter, observed the situation. Mr. Carter, a distinguished man with silver hair, sipped his wine and murmured to his wife, "He's impressively composed. Most people would have reacted by now." Back at the reception desk, Emma smirked, pleased with what she thought was her solution to the problem in her mind. Shaq couldn't possibly last long here. Yet even as she relished her perceived victory, an invisible unease began to ripple through the restaurant. Shaw, though he had said little, left a distinct impression, not just due to his imposing presence, but because of his calm, commanding grace. Tonight, Lumiere was about to become more than just a fine dining venue. It was about to serve as the stage for an unforgettable lesson. Emma stood a few steps away from Shaw's table, her eyes glancing over, as if calculating her next move to solidify her imagined authority. Her previous actions, claiming a special seat and dropping subtle insinuations, seemed insufficient to satisfy her sense of superiority. Turning back with the soft leather menu in hand, she approached Shaw's table deliberately, her slow steps drawing the attention of nearby diners. Placing the menu in front of Shaq, Emma leaned in, her gaze brushing over him with a mocking edge. "Would you like me to explain the prices?" she asked, her tone intentionally condescending. Her finger pointed to the corner of the menu where the restaurant's most luxurious dish was listed. "The most expensive item here is $350. She emphasized each word, her eyes locked onto Shaq's face, searching for any trace of discomfort or hesitation. Shaq, steady as a rock against a gentle wave, remained unshaken. He simply looked up, his eyes carrying a hint of amusement. "I'll have the fete mignon rossini," he said, his tone calm, as if he were ordering the simplest dish on the menu. Shaw's response caused Emma to falter briefly. She hadn't expected him to choose the priciest dish so nonchalantly. Quickly recovering, she let out a derisive laugh, loud enough to draw the attention of other diners. "Oh, really?" Emma replied, her voice syrupy sweet, but laced with thinly veiled scorn. "I hope you know how to appreciate it. This isn't the kind of food that everyone is accustomed to." Nearby diners began to notice. A young couple at a neighboring table whispered, "She's so rude. Why would she talk to a customer like that?" The man beside her shook his head. "She probably thinks he can't afford it." Emma, seemingly indifferent to the subtle disapproval of a few guests, remained at Shaw's table, her hand resting on the edge as she awaited further reaction. But Shaq simply smiled. "Thank you for the suggestion. I'm looking forward to trying it," he said, his polite and steady voice tinged with warmth. Shaw's composed response unsettled Emma. In her mind, this tall man dressed in casual sportswear and worn sneakers couldn't possibly grasp the true value of such a luxurious dish. Yet, without realizing it, her demeanor and actions had already exposed her own pettiness and lack of professionalism. As she turned away, Emma deliberately raised her voice, addressing a colleague nearby. "F. Mignon Rossini,"